Jeff Blauette, technical agronomist with Cooperative Farmers Elevator. And on this week's Field Friday segment, I thought I'd talk about, we talked last week about what's our herbicide interactions with this weather. I thought I'd talk about, the next step, what's our crop growth and how is it affected by this weather, i.e. the dryness we've had, the lack of rain lately. You can see we're out here late morning. You can kind of see that this corn, the leaves are just starting to roll already this afternoon. It'll probably roll up worse. We've had a lot of these hot, dry south winds recently, and you might even notice the camera shaking a little bit because of the winds we're out here in this morning. But this corn's a little bit faster ground, going to be a little quicker to show moisture stress, but there's a lot of moisture stress showing up around the territory. You can kind of see this is a little bit bigger than knee high. This corn's about V8. There's a lot of V6 to V8, V9 corn is kind of where a lot of the stuff is that was planted somewhat on time. And so what's that mean? Luckily, because we saw this last June as well, we were pretty hot and dry early on, started getting some rains in July, and our crop yields were really pretty doggone good when it was all said and done, and I don't think we would have given us anywhere close to that kind of potential at the end of June last year. So hopefully we mirror that again this year. But the moisture needs of this crop are not quite really high yet, but they're really rapidly approaching the stage where they are. V7 corn, like I say, this is V7, V8 here. That corn crop needs about 1/10 of an inch of moisture a day. So obviously the roots are trying to extract that from the soil. The roots are rapidly growing right now, extracting more nutrients and moisture from below it. But soon that's going to be tapped out if we don't start getting some rain here. Again, I say we need about 1/10 of an inch of rain per day. If we go another 3 weeks down the road when this corn's tasseling, we need about 1/3 of an inch a day, 3/10 of rain per day or moisture per day that crop needs to keep happy. So you can see we're okay yet. This rolling corn's probably not, terribly affected negatively so much, but we will be here soon in the next few weeks if we don't change our pattern. There is some chance of rain in the forecast. Maybe it's as you're watching this, or maybe by the time you see this, maybe it's already rained, I'm hoping. But so what's the yield ramifications of moisture stress at this, these stages of corn? Really, they're fairly minimal yet at V7, V8. Corn at this stage is starting to get to the point where it's probably going to throw out another leaf collar about every 2.5 days, maybe say 3 days if we're under some stress. So if you look at that, we're at V8 today. We typically get close to 20 leaves, before we tassel. So we got another, 3 weeks probably to look at here before we start seeing tassels on fields like this. So we really don't start seeing a lot of moisture stress having a much of a negative impact on yield until we get to maybe V15. So let's say we're V8 here today. We got another 7 collars. That's another 2.5 weeks until we get to V15, 2.5. So once we get to V15, the data that's been done on it says we're probably going to lose about 4% per day yield potential under severe moisture stress. Obviously there's varying degrees of how stressful and how bad is it, but that's some numbers out there. As we get towards tassel time, moisture stress at tassel time, we all know that's the most critical time in determining yield on corn, but the reason for that is if there's moisture stress, there's an 8% potential high side of 8% yield loss per day of moisture stress. So you can see a week of really bad heat stress and moisture stress during that period, you can lose half your yield. We're hoping we don't see that on some lighter soils and some of those things where they don't have the water holding capacity. That's one of the reasons why we really struggle for yield potential most years if it's not under pivot, is because we can't keep that plant's moisture needs happy. But we're not in too bad a shape yet. Hopefully we can get through this June and maybe cool down a skosh like we did last year, starting getting some rain. We still have a lot of potential on this corn crop today, but we're entering that phase where we're going to start rapidly approaching the more consequential periods of growth in this corn where we're going to need some water to keep this plant healthy and happy. Soybeans, you see a lot of them are starting to roll up on some lighter ground or kind of get that weird grayish look. Beans are pretty resilient yet for a while. until they start throwing flowers. That period's coming as well, but we're probably more worried about the corn for moisture stress here for a little while. We need this next phase of rain to hit us here. The thing that's really critical at this stage right now is this corn plant. I've seen some show up on some of these fields where we're running into potassium deficiency. As that plant really elongates and really starts to grow, potassium is one of the building blocks of that plant. So if it can't take up potassium because the soils are dry, that can become a problem. And nitrogen and potassium are related. If it can't take up enough nitrogen or potassium, it won't take up nitrogen either, just because they're kind of coupled in how they're pulled into the plant. So we're entering into a really rapidly approaching some of the higher stress periods of this corn. So just thought I'd bring you up to speed as far as what the corn's needs are and what its yield ramifications are at these stages and how things are looking. So with that, that's this week's Field Friday segment, and we'll see you next week.